Believe it or not, it's another VO podcast with three guys who are full-time voice actors at different stages of life, career, and location.
But they have formed a bond and work together to hold each other accountable and help each other on their VO path.
Three guys from different backgrounds working together, helping each other, and sharing with you along the way.
Hey, what are we calling it again?
It's another VO podcast.
Okay, guys. Sorry, I get it. Come on, you're not my dads.
And welcome back to It's Another VO podcast. It's my week on the hot seat. And since it is, I looked at the calendar today, and this is going to be put out, a week or two after, but it doesn't matter. Today is National Bourbon Day. Did you guys know that?
No, but I'm also not a keeper of National Whatever Day.
It's National Bourbon Day.
Yeah.
So it being National Bourbon Day and me living right on the Tennessee-Kentucky line, which there is so much bourbon in Kentucky, some in Tennessee, Jack Daniels, of course, in Tennessee. I think George is not Dickel, but there's another one that's here. But anyway, from that, let me ask you guys this very odd question because I thought about this. Do you know the difference between whiskey and bourbon?
Oh, I've heard this.
I think I toured the Jack Daniels distillery a couple years ago, and I'm pretty sure they told us, but I don't remember.
Well, you're going to have to hit us with it.
Yeah, it wasn't a big shock to me, but whiskey is made primarily from a bunch of different grains, and bourbon is made predominantly from corn. So it begs the question that, moonshine is predominantly corn
liquor.
So you have to think, did bourbon grow from moonshine? That might be something to look into later. I just wonder, as they began to say, we need to make more of this and store it and put it in barrels, that's when it became whiskey. I got to wonder. That's a question to be asked. Do you guys know also what flavor that an oak barrel lends to the taste of bourbon?
I'm going to guess an oaky
Gotta
flavor.
Be
Bob.
smoky, yeah.
I thought the same thing, but no, it's vanilla.
Really?
It adds a vanilla taste. I had no idea. And I never, in sipping something that says it was aged in an oak barrel, now that I think about it, I'd think it's got this woodsy something taste, but I couldn't, you couldn't put your finger on it, but it's vanilla. And all right, so for last but not least, there are 5 top brands rated on National Bourbon Day. And of all places, this comes from Good Housekeeping Magazine. Now, I'm not going to challenge you guys to figure out which one goes first, but this will kind of shock you because it shocked me. The number 5 is Elijah Craig, who he claims he invented bourbon whiskey. Elijah Craig's Small Batch is number 5. Breckenridge, of which I've never heard of. And I'm not a big connoisseur of this anyway, but, I've never heard of it. The next one is very popular, Wild Turkey 101. That is a very popular brand. And that is good stuff. Hill Rock.
I've heard McConaughey talk about that.
Oh, yeah?
He does the Wild Turkey stuff, yeah.
It's good stuff. Hill Rock Solera Aged, number 2. I had not heard of that. And going back to the Wild Turkey, you got to be careful with that stuff.
Yeah.
About more than about 4 ounces of it for me, and it's curtains. I mean, I'll just go to sleep wherever I'm sitting or wherever. And I've never been, I'm not a person that, a lot of people drink and get rowdy. I don't do that. I'll fall asleep. It just puts me away. But anyway, the number 1, and I thought this was unusual because I was expecting a little bigger name brand, Four Roses Single Barrel. And Four Roses, very popular Kentucky brand, even in the lower priced, the standard Four Roses, which is $20 to $22 for a fifth. Very popular. I noticed that here in the stores here. It's always, you're lucky if there's a bottle or 2 on the shelf. But the single barrel is more up in the, $60 range. And I can't do that. I'm a cheapo if I'm going to have something like that. All right. Last but not least, and this is a contest. I want you both. What is the most popular mixed bourbon drink?
mixed bourbon drink?
Mm-hmm.
7-7.
I have
Bourbon
no
and 7.
idea. I have no idea.
The old-fashioned.
The old-fashioned.
Oh,
Yeah, that's the most popular.
it's in the name,
Wow.
old-fashioned.
Yeah, and speaking
Makes
of
sense.
bourbon and bars and drinking, that leads me to the topic of voiceover conferences.
Because most of them are at bars.
I see where you're
Because
going there.
so much of the camaraderie and so much of the, renewing friendships and meeting people happens if you go to VO Atlanta and the great big Hilton bar area and the, I like to call it the promenade area. I didn't know promenade meant to take a walk, but I learned that over the weekend watching Bridgerton. So I always learn
Square
something.
dancing,
Yeah,
right?
have you done square
Yeah,
dance
promenade.
calling?
That's
Yeah.
what I thought it was.
Promenade.
But they said, "Oh, shall we go for a promenade?" Sure.
Oh,
So let's talk about conferences and how they can help your career when you need to go. We'll talk about what we have and haven't done, which is not a whole lot. Are you guys aware of some of the different conferences? Can you name some of them?
I know One Voice is by
One
me
Voice.
in Dallas.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
VO
VO
Atlanta.
but yeah,
Yeah.
you
Yep.
already said that. There's Mavo, isn't that right?
Yes, that's another one.
And then what's the one that you actually just won a scholarship to online, the Vocation?
Yeah, evocation.
Yeah,
I'm
congratulations on that, by the
so
way.
excited about that. Now, you guys do know too that evocation is different because it's not a performance conference. It's strictly a VO business conference.
I did not
So-
know that, but that makes
Yeah.
sense. That's cool.
And that was why I was very, very anxious to try to give my best entry to get into that because that's a big thing. Also, there's Sovus that happens out in Los Angeles. That's another one I can think of, and there are more. I know there's one in Canada. There's several smaller conferences, but if we look at the big picture, VO Atlanta is the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah.
much. And then everything else, which One Voice is somewhat acclimated to it and a lot of similarity, but a little smaller, which I have a feeling this year it's going to be bigger than it's been. I see a lot of people that are going. So to One Voice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
One Voice.
I think it's going to be a little larger crowd this year.
Cool.
So between the three of us, let's talk about not only VO conferences, but other conferences, if we've ever been to conferences. What about you guys?
I've been to conferences off and on, different kinds of conferences. Certainly when I was in ministry, I did a lot of conferences with that, learning my craft in that. I did some writing for a while, and I went to some writer conferences, and those were very cool. Learned a lot in those writer conferences.
That's interesting.
And it's neat to hear from other people and what their experiences are. I mean, I love sitting in the sessions, the breakouts that you get to focus in on just, one specific aspect of a business. For the writers' conference that I went to, I remember there was one about writing in a certain particular voice, and that was a very narrow focus for that session, but it was a challenging thing to learn how to do as well. So, I like that. But I think just as much getting the camaraderie, meeting other people who are doing the same things you're doing, and sitting down over lunch break and having conversations with them about what they've tried, maybe some things I hadn't thought of yet, to try. So it's kind of vague because we're talking about in general here, but.
Yeah, but the similarities, you're speaking everything that happens at VO Atlanta. There are, general things, and then there's the breakouts, and then there's the targeted courses you go to where there are only 12 people and you're paying extra for that extra attention. Very similar. Jake, did you have to go do much of that when you were in your previous job?
No, I have never been to a conference of any sort. They definitely have piqued my interest in terms of the voiceover conferences and stuff like that. And there was actually in high school, I think they had a Thespians Guild conference that you could go to, and I did qualify for it in my junior year, so I could have gone in my senior year, but I don't recall why I didn't do that. But I've never been to a conference of any sort. I would like to go to maybe the one near me, One Voice, but I'm guessing it'll probably take a little while and some more financial stability to make that a wise decision. But
Right.
they are cool to see. I see pictures online all the time from other VO folks I know who have gone to these things. It looks great. It looks like a fun experience to connect one-on-one. I'm not one-on-one, but connect with people in person there,
Hmm.
versus this whole virtual and digital connection that we're
Right.
mostly doing.
Right. Did you submit for any of the scholarship stuff for One Voice?
I did.
Okay.
The only one I saw out there was JMC
Yeah.
had put one
Yeah.
out there, so I submitted to that. And I'm sure like multiple people out there, they did too. So best of luck to everyone. So cross my fingers, I'll get it. But if not, I totally get it. They make their decisions based on their requirements, and whoever
Sure.
gets it, congratulations.
Yeah. My intent was to be there, but it's just not going to work out. There's too many. Life will line things up, and sometimes you have to go. No, I just can't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
As bad as I'd like to go, I just can't do it. And I even had a place to stay. It
Ooh.
was just going to cost me a plane ticket, and the plane ticket was not bad. Nashville to Dallas is not bad. I could go round trip for like $380. Wasn't bad.
You can even
But
check now; they have like a 40% discount with Southwest.
yeah, there you
I
go.
looked into
So
it, and I just had a scheduling conflict with the one coming up in Dallas, so
yep,
decided
yep,
not to, even if my schedule changed, I decided not to throw my hat in for the scholarship.
right, right.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I kind of mentioned starting into is why would you want to go to one of these conferences? And Alden hit a lot of that, and it's really two main things. It's education and it's networking. Those are the two main things that you're looking for. And a lot of people don't look at the VO conferences. Well, it's just a bunch of other voice actors. Why network? The the strength of that is you are in a building full of creatives who are doing what you're doing. There can be opportunities that, and they may be very seldom, that they may know of an opportunity for you that fits you that didn't fit them. You never know. But the thing is building friendships and meeting people who are doing the same thing you're doing and struggling the same way you're struggling. You may come out of that with a accountability partner. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
At VO Atlanta, there's other things going on there. They even have um, a contest, more or less, to where you and a group of 5 other people create a 30-second spot, and you're given the subject or the specs one afternoon, and this has to be in the next day before noon. But here's the funny part: you don't know who the other 5 people are, and you got to find them.
How do
And
they
there's a
do that?
it's you get email addresses. You have to start emailing. We're going to meet here at 1:00. Can you be here? You sit down. You go through the specs. You come up with, everybody comes up with a script idea. You hammer it down to, get your 30. You want to get as many people involved in the recording as possible. It's pretty stressful, but you build a really neat friendship with those 5 people because you work together for about 24 hours.
Cool.
And that's another cool thing to do. And the other thing is learning more about the industry. You're learning about different pieces and parts of the industry. You may go listen to Joe Cipriano talk about promo. You may go listen to Scott Parkin talk about improv. You may go listen to Karen Gilfrey talk about auditioning and how to get things in better and how to audition better. There's so many of those 1-hour things you can pick up. Plus there's breathing exercises. There's
Mm-hmm.
marketing stuff. There's how to write better emails. There's people like Mark Scott there. There's people there like Paul Smith. There's people, JMC is there, of course. And there's vendor booths set up. It's just a really good break from being isolated at home all the time to getting to be around tons of creative people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's probably one of the main differences for it. So Jake, not having been and hearing some of that, can you see how that could possibly help you with your climb, or what do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that was one of the things I mentioned in my entry to the scholarship was like, I really think that being able to go to at least one of these conferences would be a game changer. Now, whether that comes in the form of networking or something I can learn from other people I'm there, I don't know yet. But like I had mentioned in one of the previous episodes, I didn't start connecting with other voice actors until this year, really. I mean, like, I think some people would see me here and there. I was kind of in the background, but it wasn't until this year that I started making these virtual connections. And I'm a pretty personable person once you get me in person. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I just start to talk and I'm an open book pretty much. So I feel like going out there would just give people a better idea about who I am versus what they see online. Because online, you just see my typed words. You don't hear how I sound. You don't hear how I talk. You don't hear. I joke a lot too. I mean, like, I don't really do it a whole lot with on the podcast or anything like that. At least not yet.
I got a story about you.
What?
Oh, here we go. But anyway, I feel like going to these things outside of networking, that connection you get to make with people gives people a better idea about who you are than what your online presence is. Because I can make myself look one way to everybody online, but it's not until you meet them in person that you really understand, or at least begin to understand somebody.
Yeah, and it's also a good place for, like, we had several people from the VO Life group come to VO Atlanta, so we were able to meet face to face, and we never had.
Mm-hmm.
We went out to eat almost every night. We grew closer and enjoyed it. Brad Grahowski, who I've known for online for almost 3 years, finally got to meet him in person. And Dana Ramoni, who I've known since he started in voiceover, he was able to come and meet him, and it was great. I mean, a lot of people from the group. I sit here and can't think of names because I go blank. But no, the Jake story. Yesterday, I was, how we get off in different rabbit holes, and I had not been on voices.com in a long time, and just went in and just did males, certain age, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I'm going through the pages and looking, and your profile popped up. And when I clicked on the demo, it was not what I expected.
What?
It went right into Peter.
Oh yeah, my Peter Griffin voice. Yeah, that's like my best impression ever.
It was really freaking good, man. It was really good when I listened to it, and I thought, why would it pull that up and play that? And then when I got to mine, it played my political demo.
So it changes it all the time, because I've gone to look at that.
Does.
I've gone to look at my profile to see which one demo plays, because it's like I want certain demos to be at the forefront. You know what I mean?
Right,
but I've seen an uptick in that Peter Griffin demo. I posted it like last week or whatever, or I added it to my profile last week, and it just keeps getting more and more hits. And I'm like, okay, like
I guess that's out of our control.
Yeah,
it apparently is. But I went on there looking to see, like, when, let's say, a client just puts in this, and and it starts putting up profiles.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's like other platforms because I was logged in and I was on the first page. Coincidence? Mm-hmm. I think not.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I was looking at the number of reviews, just to see, and I was really surprised how many people had 5 or less. I went through like 5 pages, and there were a lot of people on those first few pages that had some 0, some 3, some 2. Yeah. And then there'd be the next guy that had 1,730. And then there'd be,
those been on since like 2010, though.
Yeah.
Like before there was a bunch of people on the site.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that does, and I guess I was looking to confirm my thought, how many new people got on during the special.
Mm-hmm.
And I and that,
Gotcha.
that was the truth. But anyway, flipping back over to where we were, the networking value and what Jake's talking about is seeing and meeting people that you interact with online. It's really neat to do, because you'll see a face and you'll go, I know that face. Who is that? And sometimes you just have to walk up and say, hey, and before you get your name out, yeah, you're Troy, and I'm so-and-so. Thank goodness you said your name, because that's embarrassing.
Yeah, for
You'll
sure.
forget. But you'll do a lot of that, and then you'll do a lot of where you'll be surprised too. Somebody will grab you by the arm and say, aren't you so-and-so? And you're like, yeah. And it's funny because people will recognize you.
I was going to ask you that too, because I mean, from an outsider's perspective, like, you seem to have been at least gaining traction and popularity, so to speak, from people getting into VO with your Facebook group and from your podcast as well, the VO Life.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, when you went to VO Atlanta, did you have those moments where people recognized you and like just where you just weren't expecting it, kind of thing? I mean,
yeah, it was scary.
Yeah,
It really
that's what
was.
I thought. So I was like, it's kind of like being a bit, like a celebrity in your
Yeah.
own
Do you
right
have
in that little
stalkers, Troy?
niche. Yeah.
Yeah, I had the one, but I don't know what happened with that one. Yeah. The first year I played Flower on the Wall, I was a nervous wreck. I went, 2 years ago, and I went to classes and stuff. I stayed under the radar. I hung out with Kevin Kilpatrick some. Kevin, just bless his heart, he was so good to me. He was like trying to introduce me to people and get me around more people.
Mhm.
And I'm not very extroverted like that. Now, if somebody else starts talking, I'll stand and talk with you, but
Sure.
I'm not the guy to start the conversation usually. Charles Coates also was down there with me, and Charles has no shields or walls up.
Yeah.
He will talk to anybody and
Yeah, he will.
everybody and start a conversation. So I would kind of, tailcoat him around, and then he'd pull me into the conversation, which was great. But this last year, I can't tell you the number of times, a dozen or more, which surprised the heck out of me. Somebody walk up to me and say, "Hey, you're Troy on the VO Life." And yeah. And it surprised me. It shouldn't, because there's a lot of downloads of the podcast, but still,
It's just not something you think about when you're
You
not
don't.
seeing those people in person. You see them as a number,
don't.
essentially. Not that people are a number, but that's how your perception of it is from your booth alone. But when you go out
they
there,
get
Yeah.
lost in the crowd.
right.
Yeah, and you feel like, I'm not anybody. I'm not so and so or so and so, and you're not. But you got to remember, new people are trying to get different information that we're trying to get now. They're trying to get the information we needed 2 or 3 years ago, and
Right.
that's what we're
Mhm.
giving in a lot of these
Mhm.
podcasts.
Yeah.
So with that said, and we're talking about new people and 3-year people and whatever. At what point in your career do you think you should invest in going to a conference? Where should you be in your journey? What do you guys think, Alden?
Well, I think for conferences, it depends on what you're wanting to get to next, because you should have a return on the investment. You should have something coming back to you from the conference. So if you're wanting to get better at a certain aspect, or if you're wanting to build your business in all aspects, get from, X to Y, then a conference is going to help you do that. Especially if you go in with a purpose and a plan. It's really healthy, no matter what kind of conference you're going to, and I'm sure this would apply to the voiceover conferences that have workshops and breakouts. Write down what you want to get out of it first,
Mhm.
and then look to see what breakouts are offered that help you get that thing. Otherwise, you're going to try to grab anything that flashes, right? And
Yeah.
Right.
I end up sitting in an animators conference, and I really don't have any desire to make animation a part of my business, that I'm not going to
Sure.
get anything out of it, right? So it
Right.
depends on where you
Right.
are and how you want to grow. But I would say
Right.
at all points of your business, you can get something out of it. Now, I would say that
Right.
you need to have some foundation laid. Maybe having started to record some things, you've met with some coaches, or at least some people who can give you some feedback, if you haven't hired a coach exactly yet, because I would think a conference would be a great place to find coaches.
Another good
Yeah.
point.
But you've
Mhm.
gotten some feedback, where you are. You have had somebody give you kind of an assessment of your abilities and where you need to grow. And then you can
Mhm.
plug in that. If you can afford to go to a conference, you can grow in a lot of those areas that somebody gave you feedback on.
Those are all good points.
Absolutely.
And you can tell he's been to conferences. It's
Yeah.
not just a VO conference. You can,
Yeah.
and you guys know, we talk about this all the time. Marketing,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
it's not what you're marketing, it's who you're marketing.
Right.
It's you.
Right.
So it's like
Product.
this conference thing. It's the same thing. What do you get from it? Jake, what's your take on this? When should you go?
Man, I really don't know what to say about that necessarily, because I mean, like, I was gonna say, like, you definitely probably shouldn't go if you're just interested in voiceover, but then Alden hits you with the, it just depends on where you're at. You can go everywhere, but I
Mhm.
do agree that you should have a foundation or whatever. But I mean, you might want to at least get yourself set up to where you have like a recording, a recording space, and you've been. You don't necessarily have to have booked work to go to these things, because obviously conferences can help you in that direction. But I
Mhm.
mean, it's just, I wouldn't focus on wanting to go to a conference if I was just getting into voiceover. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
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 I agree.
And if you
And
can,
something I've
if you can look and see what they're offering, and nothing is for beginners, how to get started.
Good point.
Then if you're a starter, that conference isn't for you.
Yeah, good point. And they, I can only speak for VO Atlanta. I know they had some things of, not introduction to VO,
Hmm.
but some things of, where owning your auditioning skills. Last year there was a course I went to that did kind of get into some basics, of, talking about what a doll was and and they only did it for about 30 minutes. And then they got into the last hour and a half, everyone got to read, and they did some performance coaching. But finding a coach at a conference is a good point, because you can sit through either a 1 hour session or go to one of the 3 hour breakouts, and you can really see what their method is. How
Yeah.
they do it. Are they patient? Are they, it's really a good way to learn the people. And as both of you guys have said, there's two different ROIs you get out of this. You get a personal ROI with growing your business, being more confident in what you're doing, and the networking. That's your personal. Is there a big financial ROI? Hard to say. If it helps increase your business, sure it is, but can you measure
Yeah, it's
that?
hard
I
to
think
measure, isn't it?
it is. And I think some of this is, do you want to be present and be in the circles and in the networking? I'm sure there are 1,000 VOs that never go to conferences. They
Oh yeah.
never do hardly any of this stuff. They don't listen to podcasts. They don't do it, but they're making a living. There's some people making a living who aren't interactive in the business. I like to be interactive in it. I want to know what's going on and who's doing what and what the trends are. And I think that it's a great place to find that out.
Well, and there's a
So,
side of it, Troy. I'm sorry to interject, but
no,
there's a
you're
side of
fine.
it because the product you're selling to your clients, you're getting a better product to sell to them.
Sure.
So for those who don't go, how do they grow? If they're not going to
Yeah.
conferences, if they're not listening to podcasts, if they're not seeking out coaching, how are they growing to give a better product to their clients? That's my question. And if you want to give a better product to your clients, a conference is a great way to do that.
Absolutely.
My
I
guess at
think so
that point
too.
is that person who doesn't go and doesn't do all that stuff, they just got to be really intuitive and probably want to do their
Hmm.
own, they do their own research. I mean, I'm not saying it can't be done,
Yeah.
but it's definitely difficult without being involved. But something
Right.
else I want to add to the whole conference thing too is I was told before by someone fairly elite, that conferences are a big way for people who want to get involved in voiceover to spend money that they won't ever see again. Because again, we touched on this with the whole a couple episodes ago about putting money in and not ever seeing it back, come back.
Hmm.
And I'm not putting down conferences. Again, I myself have interest in going to some of them, but I also feel like I have a spot in this industry to make money in. And a lot of people will go to every conference they can and still not see a return
Hmm.
on that at all. So it's
Hmm.
Yeah.
something you got to be wary of, and that goes back to having a level of self-awareness that we talked about a couple episodes ago. Like, make sure that voiceover's for you
Hmm.
Right.
Yep.
before
Right.
going to before making a decision to go to a conference, because they do get pricey. Not only the conference price, but if there's specific classes you want to take, some of them are cost extra, as you had
Right.
Yeah.
pointed out earlier. So do your research about conferences before making the decision to go. And
Yep.
what
Hmm.
were you gonna
Yep.
what were you gonna add,
Well,
Alden?
and not just that, but I like the point you're making. Not just making sure that voiceover is for you, but if it is, make sure that you are committed to doing everything that it takes. Because when
Hmm.
you go to the conference, it's not a magic bullet.
Right.
They're going
No,
to give
There's
you
no magic
things that
bullet.
you need to hustle at. And if you go back from your conference, get back in your studio, and do the same things you've always done, you're not going to get out
Hmm.
of the conference what you were meant to get out of it. You're not going to
Hmm.
get the ROI. You're not going to see that money in return because you didn't put the hustle in that you got to put
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. One of my favorite sayings, and I used to always have this actually on my wall where I used to work: nothing changes if nothing changes.
Yeah.
And it's pretty simple. I mean, it's going to stay the same if you don't do something to make it change.
Right.
You have to. And there are people in this that are, all right, let me revert back. The conferences are also a nice tax deduction. You know, you can go down there and spend a week and enjoy, and everything you do is a tax write-off. Not a bad thing. You can
Yeah.
write it off. That's a help.
Yep.
Actually, my accountant encourages me to try to go to a couple of them because it helps offset what's coming in. On the other hand, like Alden was saying, there are people who are lonely and they really don't need the money.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
They just need to talk to people and they need something they can chase and something they can do. And they're doing this. And
It's a party they're
I'm
invited
not
to.
it is, and I'm not knocking it because I don't even think all of them realize that's what they're doing.
Sure.
They're just doing that, and they're
Yeah.
you know it'll come together for me. I only been doing this for 4 or 5 years. It's gonna come together, but they're not really doing the thing. They're
Yeah.
not really hustling. They're not marketing. They just enjoy coming to a workout or going to a conference or whatever. And, you know, I'm not going to knock that. If they got the money, that's okay. But if it's the thing where, like Jake said, if you're pouring money into something and there's no return, think about it.
Yeah.
You know, think about it. Then
Mhm.
it's definitely a hobby,
Right.
you
Yep.
know, an expensive hobby.
Right.
And if that's what you want, I have 11 horses here.
Yeah.
I would be glad to give you a very expensive hobby and you can talk to this horse, go rub on it all day long. You know, it's a great hobby.
Yeah, hay's gonna be expensive this year, Troy.
I know.
Yeah.
I've got 16 rolls coming this week at last year's price
Mm.
because it was
Ooh.
an early cut,
That's
and
good.
that was all they'd give me. And then I'll have to buy 48 more after these 16. But those 16 are costing me $85 a roll.
And how long
Per
does
roll.
16 rolls of hay last 11 horses?
Well, I won't be feeding them until winter. So they'll go up in the barn. I'll start feeding in winter, and
I didn't
I'll
know
usually
horses
put
didn't have
out
to eat that long.
I'll put out 3 rolls a week.
Oh, okay.
So that's 12. And
It's a month of
and
work.
then I usually have to sustain about 4.5 to 5 months. So
Mm.
around 60 rolls, 60 times 85. Yeah,
Sheesh.
you're pushing $6,000. That's just round bales. All right. Then I've got to bring in the square bales at $5.25 a piece, probably in the neighborhood of 600 of those. That's another $3,000. That's almost 10 grand in hay. Then all the supplements and everything else we do, vet bills, all that, usually another 20 grand a year.
That's making the investment sound much better for voiceover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Much
Yeah.
lower of
If
an
I-
investment.
holding a
If I could
or why
invest
you can't
30,
get a horse.
yeah, if I could drop 30 grand a year in voiceover conferences, man, I'd be traveling the world. Wouldn't that be nice? Well, we've covered about all we know to cover about VO conferences. We want to encourage you, if you have the opportunity to go to one and you're in the industry and love what you're doing and have not been to one, I personally will tell you, you will thoroughly enjoy it, getting to meet people. VO Atlanta is my only experience. I have Evocation coming up in September, which is a virtual, but I am so looking forward to that because it's focused strictly on the business side. One Voice coming up in August. You'll have Sovus coming up toward the end of the year, and there are many more. You can research those online, and we invite you to do so. Any closing comments, guys, as we close her out today?
I just want to say if you have been to a voiceover conference or if you're thinking about going to a voiceover conference, shoot us an email at anothervopodcast@gmail.com. Share your experience, share what you got out of it, or share what you would like to get out of a conference, and we can address it here on the podcast and just talk about what your thoughts are. We would really like to hear from all of you about that topic and any other topic that you see fit in the voiceover industry. We want to talk about it. So
Yep.
I encourage you guys to email us, and we look forward to getting those emails from you.
Yep, we'd
Yep.
love to hear from you.
Good deal. Coming up next week on the podcast, we'll be talking to Sarah Tyndall. She is a voice actor more out towards the western part of the U.S. She goes by That Girl, and she's been around a while. She's very active in clubhouse groups and things, and we'll get to hear from her and look forward to talking to her. We have never met, and just have had online interaction, and that's how a lot of this works.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun to come into these just completely unprepared, completely blind, getting to know the person. And that's what I enjoy doing. I really do. I think with three of us talking to her, we're going to have a good time. So I look forward to that.
Hope she doesn't get
And that will
overwhelmed.
be,
Yeah, I was about to
no,
say.
I don't think it'll bother her a bit. You
Nah,
guys
we're
are in
good,
for
guys.
a treat. You're in for
Yeah.
a treat. You're going to enjoy it. Hey, thanks for listening again. Don't forget you can email us, as Jake said, at anothervopodcast@gmail.com. For the two guys that you're seeing or hearing, Jake Sanders, Alden Schoenberg, we appreciate you. I'm Troy Holden, and we'll see you on the next one.
Take care.
Bye.
You've been listening to It's Another VO Podcast. I'm Alden Schoenberg.
And I'm Jake the Snake.
No, you are not. Settle down.
All right. I'm Jake Sanders.
And I'm Troy Holden.
Join us weekly as we spill the beans about our challenges being full-time struggling voice actors.
Yeah, and by the way, my girlfriend says you two better get it together, because she doesn't want me carrying you two on this podcast.
Saith the voiceover rookie himself. But be sure and join us on the next episode, because I guarantee it, Jake will do something worth hearing.
And what do you mean by that? No, really, what does that mean?
Dude, let it go. It's all right. It's all right.
Hey, where are you guys going? Hey, don't you kill the feed. Don't you dare kill the feed. Hey, where are you going, Alden? Troy, what are you... Come back!